Brian, I want to thank you for joining us today at Contact Center World. I understand that you're in Durham in the UK. Welcome, and how are you?
Doing well today, Raj. Looking forward to having a discussion with you. So yeah, things are going great.
Excellent, excellent. And you're originally from Kansas, I understand. Is that correct?
Yeah, born and raised in the U.S. Spent nearly 30 years in the U.S. and then the last 12 years here in the U.K. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I hope you're enjoying the UK anyway. And it's certainly, Durham's it's a university town. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. It's pretty quiet at the moment with everything going on in the world. But yeah, it's a lovely city here in the northeast of England.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you for joining us again. So we're going to catch up with you about some, I've got some questions for you. And before we get into that, though, I'd like to just maybe ask you if you can just tell us a little bit about the company that you work for.
Yeah, so I represent FIVE9, so I'm responsible for our Europe, Middle East, and Africa business as the general manager of our business here. FIVE9 is one of the leading cloud contact center providers globally, and one of our taglines is making customer service a more human experience, and I would love to talk to you a little more about that today.
Excellent. Well, that's the topic we're going to talk about. So let's start off with what is customer experience and why does it matter?
Yeah, for me, I mean, customer experience is one of my passions. It's why I'm working for FIVE9. It's one of the reasons that after about 2 years of kind of being out of the contact center space, I decided I really wanted to come back and join one of the leading organizations doing this here. So customer experience to me, not only is it my passion, but it really is one of those things that can impact every single one of us as consumers in our daily lives, right? People ask you, well, what do you do? I say, well, I make your life better. And they say, well, what do you mean you make your life better? Well, do you shop? Do you interact with a bank? Do you interact, with any type of organization, your local council on a daily basis? Well, of course I do. Well, we provide software that helps make those interactions better, right? Makes it more seamless, makes it more less painful. So for me, it really is those, I guess customer experience is all about the kind of the sum of all those interactions that a person has with an organization, throughout their lifetime. So it's pretty important, right? We interact with businesses every single day, and a lot of our frustration comes from dealing with organizations, but also a lot of our happiness does as well. So CX is a very, very important thing to my heart.
Excellent. I like the way you describe what you do to people you meet. It's a good way of doing it. So well done on that. So, but talking about CX though, some people say isn't it another, yet another name for customer service?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Having been in this industry for quite some time, I ran a contact center business here for about 6 years in the UK. And I remember when the CX trend kind of came along, right? And everybody jumped on that bandwagon. So a lot of the manufacturers and everybody was all of a sudden a customer experience specialist, or we provided customer experience software. So I don't believe that CX is customer service. I believe that CX is the overarching strategy that an organization tries to maintain with their customers, right? And that customer service is one of those key touch points along those journeys, right? So, really customer service is, I would say, really a subcomponent of an overall CX strategy or CX architecture.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. And in terms of what would you say are the essential ingredients then for delivering like the perfect or an outstanding customer experience? Is it people? Is it technology? Is it process?
Yeah, so I think if you're looking holistically at customer experience, I think you have to take a step back first, and you have to start really with the culture of the organization. So really the people. It has to be ingrained not just in the frontline staff, but it also has to be ingrained all the way up to the leadership and the people that actually are driving the business at an executive level on a daily basis. So they're really ingrained inside the culture. When I say ingrained, I think that's really probably this really key word there, right? Because ingrained to me means adoption, right? Fully adopted and people believing in it. I had when I first passed my CCXP, or Certified Customer Experience Professional test, about 6 years ago, I remember the instructor, Ian Golding, was talking to me about him going into a customer about talking about customer experience strategy. And I remember him saying that actually the board meetings that he was setting in this customer and the daily sales calls and those types of things, like they weren't talking about like the actual customers. They were talking about internal processes and internal things that didn't really, not once was the customer name mentioned. So, must start with culture, the people, must really start with that adoption all the way up to kind of the board level. You then really need to understand like kind of insights, what's going on with our customers, understand the customers themselves, and then really build out that kind of technology strategy to support, all of that, right? And then it's a kind of a rinse and repeat. It's measuring it, making sure you're doing really well, and then executing and improving, tracking metrics, whether it's NPS or whatever it may be, to kind of complete that. So I think, essential ingredients, it's got to be people, it's got to be adoption of practices, it's got to be listening to your customers, and then the right tools in place to be able to deliver those experiences.
So how does an organization, how do they understand that their customer experience needs to get better? How do they go about doing that?
Yeah, I think it's probably awareness and listening is the first thing. You can always look at company performance being one thing, right? So, it is a proven fact by many of the various different organizations, whether it's KPMG or whether it's the CXPA that have kind of done the studies that typically industry leaders from a financial performance perspective, whether it's stock market, they typically rank better in their customer experience scores and initiatives as well. So whether it's just basically company performance or whether it's just awareness and listening, right? Listening to your customers and listening to the feedback of what's going on, I think really is the first thing that an organization needs to do to realize, hey, we've got a problem here. We need to work on our customer experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a very big human element, but where does technology fit into the process then?
Yeah, technology is key in a couple of different angles, I would say. One, I think if you look at it kind of short term, I think one of the really key things is making sure that the technology is easily adopted inside an organization. So making it easy for the agents, easy for the supervisors, right? The technology can't be cumbersome. The information is going to be readily at the agents, the tips of their fingers, right? And maybe even if we're getting into some of the AI technologies or some of the future trends, being able to assist the agent and make their job more effective or more efficient or reduce repetitive tasks. So, technology plays a key role in all those areas, but it has to be ingrained into the organization's, not only processes, but just making sure that it's very simple and easy to use for the people that are using it.
Interesting. And, with everything going on today with COVID-19, coronavirus, lockdowns, pandemics, all the stuff that's happening today, what's the role of customer experience in today's market?
Yeah, I would say that it becomes even more important, right? There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of anxiety in the world, a lot of uncertainty in the world. People have lost jobs, lost family members. So it's a really trying time for the human race. And I think that the role of the customer experience organization, the contact center, first and foremost has to be one of empathy. Empathy is a really, really key one, right? Understanding where their customers are coming from, knowing that they could have been just through a very traumatic experience in their life, I think is the first one. The second one would really be setting expectations with their customers as well, right? Not every organization have had the benefit of actually being on cloud-based solutions where literally you pick up your laptop at your desk at your corporate office and you go home and you log into your cloud-based contact center and you're taking calls, right? So a lot of organizations haven't had that flexibility, and so from that perspective, you've got a lot of organizations that just can't meet the needs and the call volumes and the requests that are coming into the companies. And so, setting expectations is really, really critical by the company as well.
I know, if you and I were talking literally just 3-4 months ago, sure, we could have a really good, interesting debate about cloud technology and its adoptance by contact centers and, organizations who are looking to deliver outstanding service. But, it's now become a necessity for most organizations to be using cloud technology. What's I guess a lot of the concerns are still would exist though about scalability, security, flexibility, and such like with cloud technology. How do you, how do you address those sort of questions that you probably still get?
Do you know, I would say that we used to get those a lot more, right? Cloud, if you take a look back, like 5 or 6 years ago, it was more of a question mark. In fact, our CEO kind of stood up on stage at our CX Summit, which is our virtual customer event that we have every year, last year, and basically said that, kind of 2020 will be the year of the cloud, which who knew that we would have been embracing that so much, or having to embrace it so much, right? With the likes of Zoom video calls, our grandparents and kids are doing Zoom. It's not just meant for work people anymore, right? So, at the end of the day, I don't think that those types of issues have been a bigger concern lately, right? We've seen the scalability happen. We were able to turn up 32,000 lines in the U.S. for the Small Business Association or Administration in a matter of 48 hours, right? So, scalability concerns are typically things that are really concerned with on-premise type solutions where you got physical hardware, physical boxes, physical devices, and those types of things. So, I think during this time, I think we've seen the power of cloud-based solutions. And that has been very promising. I think you'll see just even more and more adoption as we get into the next few years.
Now, one of the things that is very popular these days, one of the discussion topics, is omnichannel, as opposed to multi-channel, and sometimes people get those confused. But talking about omnichannel, how important is it in delivering that great customer experience?
Yeah. So from an omnichannel, the way we like to describe it at FIVE9 is really digital engagement. So that's the way we look at it, is really how do our consumers engage, and typically these are through a lot of various digital channels. It's extremely important. I think there's a couple of basic aspects that you can look at. Integration into a lot of the key vendors out there, such as ServiceNow or Salesforce, Oracle or Zendesk. Has always been a forefront of FIVE9's ability to make sure that we're being able to deliver the agent what they need, right? So if it's, for example, a Salesforce front end, and we're doing all the intelligent routing between the voice and all of the digital channels, right? Then we're giving the customer the best chance of having the best experience out there, because the agent has all the information across channels, across that omni-channel experience that they should need right at the forefront of their agent desktop. So I think omni-channel or digital engagement definitely plays a really key role in kind of customer experience.
So you think it's going to become the new norm as opposed to just hype that some people think it is?
If I look back 6 years ago, pretty much every single contact center that we worked with was pretty much voice only, and maybe some siloed email, very little chat. I will say, even through this kind of pandemic in the last few months, I've been interacting with the businesses that I interact with, right? Whether it's my mortgage company, or whether it's a billing question on one of my mobile phone, or whatever it may be, through web chat a lot, right? So if I just compare to my own personal experience, I don't think it's hype. I think it's a given now that digital engagement or omni-channel solutions should be there. I think we're well beyond the omni-channel hype, and I think that most of the deployments that we see at FIVE9 here, have some flavor of various omni-channel components or digital engagement components, right? Whether it's we have to have chat, we have to have email. And we need maybe an SMS channel, or we need a WhatsApp, or whatever we need. But definitely not hype anymore. It's here. It's basically coming down to the consumer trends of how consumers like to interact, right? And we've definitely seen that on the chat front for sure recently.
Now, you mentioned you've had some interactions with various different organizations recently. What sort of mistakes do you still see some organizations making when it comes to customer experience?
Yeah, I think that probably the biggest one that caught everybody off guard was just the lack of business continuity preparation, right? I think that the industry as a whole, at least what I've seen here in EMEA, has done a really good job of setting expectations and done a pretty good job of being empathetic to the customers. So I think those types of things, the resolution is still pretty good, but I think really that kind of lack of business continuity preparation. Nobody knew that all agents would be having to work from home 3 months ago or even 2 months ago. I think that's really caught a lot of us off guard. So that'd be my one big advice, piece of advice to I guess to any organization, but especially those delivering customer experience solutions. What are your plans for business continuity going forward?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. I mean, we've seen it here big time in. I'm based in Canada. We've seen it big time here in terms of some of the big box retailers who, they have a web channel. They've had a web channel for years, trying to do curbside pickup from some of them. There's two different outlets here in where I live in Thunder Bay for hardware stuff, and placed orders. One of them was placed 3 weeks ago, still not got a call to say it's ready for pickup, and that's 3 weeks ago from a big box store. Yeah. Another one, the same store but in a different part of town, took them about 10 days to get back to us and say, okay, your order's ready to pick up. So you'd think some organizations at this stage would be a little bit more organized and have a plan, especially not just that contingency plan, but be able to adapt a lot faster as well to the ever-changing world that we're in.
Yep, definitely.
So it's certainly interesting times. You've covered a lot of really good ground here, and I want to thank you for your time. Is there any other last parting comments that you want to share just before we say goodbye to you, my friend?
I mean, just from a FIVE9 perspective, like I said at the very beginning, we truly do try to make customer service a more human experience, and I think that in this day and age is even more relevant than it ever has been, right? The more that you can, have those more human-like experiences on a day-to-day basis when you're dealing with, customer complaints, you're dealing with escalations, you're dealing with billing challenges, that should just allow for a much better overall experience from the consumers in general. And at the end of the day, like I said, going back to the beginning, it should make us happier as consumers as well, right? So yeah, make customer service a more human experience.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for your time, Brian. It's a pleasure to talk to you. You stay safe there in Durham, and hope your family and all those colleagues and friends around you are safe as well. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Ross. Take care.
Thank you.